Okay, got a recording going.
Excellent. Welcome to all the attendees I see coming in. We've got a nice group coming in on my little sidebar here. So thanks for joining us today, everyone. We've got a nice presentation all about panels. So hopefully you're here looking for some tips and tricks on your interactive flat panels. My name is Evan, and with me today are my coworkers here at Boxlight. We've got Jason there and Peter, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hey
Be-
everyone, I'm
Hey,
Jason
can you
Niman, and I'll let Peter introduce himself.
Hello, my name's Peter Carpenter. I'm a product and learning experience manager at Boxlight. So great to have everybody in here today. Can't wait to show you guys some maybe new, maybe exciting things that you can do on your panels when you get back in your classroom.
Yeah. So all three of us at Boxlight, what we work on most frequently is working with educators, tech directors, and classroom teachers, basically everyone across the K-12 learning space with assisting on training and product orientations and to some extent also soliciting feedback for new features. And so we know we at least we feel like we hear the features that come through as those that teachers request or those that teachers talk about most frequently. So we've talked to a bunch of folks in our years here at Boxlight and kind of pulled together some of the things that we think we hear frequently, but also the things that people miss. So things that you would know if you were digging deep into the Boxlight world all the time, but if you are a practicing teacher who does, of course, not have time to investigate all the little details of the software, we've got a few little tips that you may have missed. So hopefully this will be worth it for you. I see Jason is loading up his files there. I think we had a quick little mea culpa here. So
Yep.
originally we were planning to have some live translations going through Zoom. I know that we have quite a few attendees from Latin America. We were looking forward to sharing Spanish translated subtitles with all of you to make this a lot more accessible for you. But unfortunately, Zoom is not cooperative today, and it looks like they are not functioning. So while this loads up, and of course the PowerPoint is also not cooperative on such short notice, we are going to be sending out recordings with translations in there. So we'll post these recordings to the Boxlight YouTube channel. If anyone in attendance also knows Ricardo, Ricardo, I believe, is also here. Ricardo Pena, our fantastic Latin America region representative for Boxlight. We will be in touch with getting some translations and captioning done for you guys because we appreciate you coming and giving us some of your time today. If you are not able to follow us and you think you'd better rather just wait for the recording, that is totally fine with us. If you want to get some time back in your day and view this recording later on, we completely understand. But we'll make sure one way or another we get some captioning for you. And PowerPoint is
So,
working on it. Oh, look at that. It worked great this time.
yeah, finally.
Way to go,
So,
Jason. All right. Yep. So unfortunately, we were stymied by Zoom in our efforts to get that working today.
yep. Yeah. So hopefully, all the people are joining us that are from, like you mentioned, like Latin America or something. They're able to actually see this now, and they'll know that we're going to get them a recorded version of this. So hopefully we can make right on it, and then we'll figure out what's actually going on after this.
Yes,
So
indeed.
cool
All
deal.
right. Well, with that, let's kick off here. We, like I mentioned, have compiled a list of a few different features and tips that we thought were less commonly, understood by most of our users. I mean, I know Jason is sharing obviously his panel screen here, so you can see what Jason's working on. That is his Mimeo panel here from Boxlight. And then Peter, Jason, and I will just run through some things. So I suppose, Jason, do you want to kick us off with sort of the first item on our list. I think we were talking about our favorite app. Is that right?
Yeah, we were. And I have some of my own favorite apps and tools that I use on the device, but I'm really interested both with both you and Peter, Evan. I want to get both of your guys' takes on, what's a favorite app or tool that you guys have that are always kind of in your tool belt to grab and use all the time.
I'll kick us off here. So when I am designing lessons for the teachers I work with, and even when I was a classroom teacher and had a panel in my room, I was always looking, and I'm going to refer to this a couple times because some of my answers might double up here. But I was always looking for ways to add kind of some movement and engagement and kind of keep my kids like kind of sort of on their toes in the classroom. It's really the easy button is, hey, let's take our Chromebooks out and here do some work on your Chromebook. But we've got this massive screen up here in front of the kids, and I like to put it to use in ways beyond just hey, look at this slide deck, look at this YouTube video, that sort of thing. So my one feature that I love to use and use it all the time because it's really sort of multifaceted and you can get really creative with how you use it is just the basic split screen that you can access from the live apps screen on most panels. So that's when you hit your side toolbar, you're going to access your live apps and you're going to see a button that allows you to basically split the screen. Jason's in his live apps here now, and on the bottom, he's got a split screen button. If you were to scroll all the way to the right, so he's going to hit split screen first on the bottom right there. And then from there, he's going to select the other screen he wants to share. So this lets me pull up two things at the same time, which isn't a revolutionary thing on a device like a flat panel, but it more comes in like how you use it. And because our panels come with sometimes up to 50 points of touch, that means you can have two students up here at the same time. Working on two separate things. Maybe they're racing to complete a math equation, or maybe we're playing a form of Pictionary or something and we're gonna throw a word and then draw pictures on the whiteboarding app. But having two kids doing it at the same time with split screen really adds like a movement and interaction element. It gets the rest of the classroom engaged because they're watching their friends compete or do something up on the screen. Of course, the students that are sitting are going to want to get up there and do it next. So it kind of creates this engagement loop with your students. And I just think there's a lot of really creative ways teachers can use this both for themselves and for the students. If I'm thinking, for teacher productivity, having a YouTube video up or a document like a poem or something, and then annotating that or writing notes on it using a whiteboarding app on the other side of the screen. So that split screen feature and not having to toggle back and forth between apps, having both up there at the same time, I find really useful for just like teacher productivity and classroom engagement. So you're getting multiple things there.
I like that one a lot. I noticed I did that when I actually first started working with Boxlight, and I was doing some trainings with teachers, and they're like, I love having content, let's say on my left side or even on the right side, but I love to have my students take notes about what we're talking about. And so, like, just things that you were mentioning, Peter, I think is so valuable because we're allowing multiple students to interact, but we're also, it's not in a standard size way. You have multiple different, items that you're able to interact with. You're able to add in these elements that pull in your students so that they're paying attention more. I think that's a great feature and great, tool that you can use on these flat panels. Evan, what about you? What do you have as like your favorite app or tool?
Yeah, I was thinking through less about the apps and more like a tool that is kind of underutilized, but I get a lot of mileage out. And I sometimes use this in presentations with educators. Normally we're doing technology trainings for districts and things. So I get plenty of use out of this tool too, but it's fantastic in the classroom. And it's a tool within Link's whiteboard. So it's not something that is active across the panel, but it's within the whiteboarding app on the Boxlight panels. And it's called window shade. So there are a lot of contexts throughout the day when you want to limit what students are interacting with or what students are seeing. Maybe you want to reveal step-by-step problems, or you want to have the answers hidden off to the side or something like that. So you in addition to splitting the screen, right, you can also split your screen with a blank part. So you don't have to show something on the other half. So the window shade is within Link's whiteboard. So Jason, if you can tap on the little icon down on the bottom toolbar, over on the left, it's the multiple pages button there.
This one?
Perfect. And then page options up at the top.
Page options. Okay.
Yeah. And now you can turn on your curtain. I call it a window shade, a curtain, synonymous. And now we have our little curtain that we can pull up and down with that little handle there. So this one, by default, it comes down from the top. But if you notice, Jason, there's a little three-dot menu over there on the right side of your screen within the curtain, and you can change it. So I actually prefer to do either bottom up or left to right, because now sort of the way that most of us work with content on screen is usually we start with the top or the right, and then we move either down or to the left. And so you can adjust this. So now if we were only, for example, on this lesson, we could work on the continents there on that side of the screen, and then we could swap it and we could do the second half of the continents. It's not really something I would probably use this tool with this exact lesson, but I think you can kind of get the possibilities here where you have that that option at any time to just limit what the students are working with. So you can turn this on in links. There's also another similar tool in our panel overall, so you can use it in Chrome or on other applications, and that's a spotlight. So a spotlight would also limit what students can see. I just like the window shade because it is rectangular, right? And almost everything that we view on screens these days is some form of rectangle. But the spotlight will also fill a similar role for content that was appropriate with it. So I love using those tools, like I said, in our own presentations, but also in a classroom context. I don't think I mentioned off the top, but all three of us are former educators in K-12, and in my case, even a little bit beyond K-12, up in the university level. So, we've had this experience with classrooms in addition to our current roles too. Hopefully, these out a little bit and pass on some useful tips.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are really good in terms of manipulating what's visible on screen, bringing more content in, hiding it, limiting it in some direction. That I know there's so much more these panels are capable of that we put together. So what's up next, Jason?
Oh yeah, I think you're right. And having the experience as former educators helps, because your mind is constantly thinking in that educator world, in that role, and how it can be beneficial. So, like Evan said, the things that we're providing to you, these are things that we either already did in our classrooms, or these were things that we would definitely do in our classroom. I'm going to jump a little bit here, and I want to kind of focus in on what's your favorite strategies or features for getting students safely and productively collaborating in the classroom. Because I think Peter mentioned that before as one of his like go-to things that he really enjoyed doing, is getting them involved in collaborating. So I want to kind of drill into that a little bit more. So I'll open the floor to either one of you to dive in and talk about that, your favorite strategies.
Evan, I'm not going to expand too much because was kind of, I had similar answers for both of these questions. And it's that multi-touch and split screen. And I talked about, having the screen split two ways, and then having two students up at the board. But we've got 50 points of touch on most of these panels. So you could have a, Link's whiteboard open. You could have the Note app, our kind of basic whiteboarding app open. You can have as many kids as you can fit in front of that screen. They don't need to be using a pen. They can be using their fingers, drawing, writing, maybe collaborating on a large diagram. I love mind mapping using graphic organizers and stuff like that. If you've got an 86-inch board in your room and you're teaching elementary schoolers, you can probably fit 4 or 5 of them up there. They're little. Now, if you're teaching high school level, it might just be, maybe 3 kids as they, age
Yeah.
up and get a little bigger. But just like getting kids up there, they want to touch these things. They want to mess with them. They see you messing with them all day. You might as well give them a proper avenue to mess with these things instead of them clicking around on it behind your back because they're so excited to go, touch the giant, cell phone you've got sitting up in front of your classroom. So give them opportunities to use these things in a productive manner. And it might actually cut down on the, maybe not so educationally focused things they try to do on the panel when maybe you're out of the room or not looking. So giving them the,
Absolutely.
opportunity to use it appropriately, like cut down on the inappropriate use you might experience from time to time. But Evan, if you've got anything to say on that,
Definitely.
I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, I think my thought process was going in a similar direction with this question, just a little bit less on the number of people that were standing next to the screen, but taking advantage of some of the other devices in our classroom too. Obviously, getting people up in front of the room, interacting with the content is super important, but sometimes we're doing work that is more digitally focused on, say, a student Chromebook, right, where they're working independently at their desks or trying to solve problems in groups. And you can share that work up at the front of the classroom too, splitting the screen, not necessarily between 2 Android apps that are running on the panel, but 2 student Chromebooks if you wanted to, or multiple. I believe we can share with our screen sharing applications up to 9 in most cases. So even if there's not enough room for 9 people in front of your panel, you could actually have them broadcast their screen up and compare how people addressed problems differently, use different strategies, maybe wrote out their steps, and a few people went in a different direction at some point. So you can clarify that with the shared screen. So this would be a great opportunity for students to show off what they've been doing on their own devices just with a wireless screen share. So you use either the Unplugged app or the Clever Share app. We do offer multiple screen sharing apps depending on your preference. And either one of them will allow a student to share their work up to the front of the classroom, and then more than one too. So it actually forms like a little grid. If you go beyond 2, obviously with 2 screens, you're looking at half screen, right? But then it forms a grid, and at any point you can pop one out and make it full screen because you're not going to be able to see too much if there's 9 screens there all sandwiched in, but you can expand them as you need and bring the students up, have them explain their work, right? They can share their screen, but also be up at the front of the room manipulating that content and looking through what they were working on, getting feedback and peer instruction from their class. So even if the physical space and the number of students who can conceivably fit in front of your panel, if you feel like that's a little limiting, you can always use the digital option as well to broadcast their screens and do it either from their desk or at the front of the class when you're asking for them to walk through their work. So these options are really great for getting more of a conversation, more of a back and forth, more student activity during their lessons, right? We trying to bring the class together to have discussions, to have simultaneous exchanges of information, so they're not just working in a silo. Even if they are using digital tools, we can still encourage that real life interaction as much as we can.
I think that was great. Both the examples that you guys provided and kind of gave more in depth was really fantastic. What I noticed is as you were kind of giving your answers, you kind of keyed into some features on some of our applications, as well as like you talked about different apps that you can use, uh, screen sharing apps and things like that. But you also keyed into features. So if you had to choose like one must-have feature that you could use throughout the whole school year, is there one maybe that that comes to the top of your head, first thing you think of type thing? Um, yeah, let's go ahead and go with that.
Right.
Oh, before I let you guys answer, I thought I saw a hand raise there for a second, but it looks like it might have gone away. Hold on one second, just double checking. Nope, it looked like it went away. Okay, so yeah, one must-have feature that you want to use throughout the school year.
If I'm going to talk about a sort of specific, get a little more granular in the features, schools I worked in were always big on sort of interdisciplinary. So, as a social studies teacher, how are you integrating, math concepts or something like that into your instruction so they're understanding that, their subjects don't sort of live in a silo. The skills that you're picking up in math we can also use in social studies. Skills we pick up in English we're also going to translate to science and things like that. So as a product of a liberal arts education, that was always at the forefront of my mind as well when I was teaching students. So and Jason, you've got a good slide open right now, because I really like using some of the math tools that links can provide from the insert menu. So Jason, I'll go ahead and let you pull up those math tools. But you're probably thinking like, why does, what is a social studies teacher doing with, math tools and manipulatives and stuff like that in a social studies classroom when you're, learning about continents and oceans? Well, I, as a social studies teacher, I wasn't going to have a box of rulers in my room. I wasn't going to have protractors. I wasn't going to like, I just didn't have those types of things. So how do I recreate it in the digital space? Well, Links provides you some of those tools. So if you go over to the insert menu, and if you hit content on
Insert.
that insert menu, there
Right.
is a
So I'm gonna act like I don't know where it is. So if you could direct me, I
right.
would.
So let's go to that plus on the toolbar at the very bottom.
Right here. Okay.
Yep, and go ahead and select content.
Content. Love it.
And from content, you've got a lot of different things here. We've got it kind of separated by subject. So these manipulatives are a little hidden, but if you go ahead and select maths,
Sure thing.
you got some sort of interactive tools. You see at the bottom, we've got a timer, stopwatch, some clocks, and things like that. For these purposes, I would probably, on this particular slide, I'd pull out that ruler, and we'll go with the inches, the standard ruler. And
Okay.
I would pull that out. I'd drag that onto my screen, and I'd resize that to appropriately. And this might not be the best map for this particular activity. But if this map had a legend and we
Projection
were
isn't
trying,
quite right, is it?
Oh,
Projection is a little bit skewed there.
yeah,
and it's
um,
cooperating.
you should be able to expand that, make it a little bigger.
I think the little drag there.
It let me do just a tiny bit, but it's not going any
I
further. It's like, no.
guess that
We might
map is a
need
little
to
too big for this one.
update your version of links. That might fix that. But yeah, if you could imagine that this particular map had a legend at the bottom, it's telling us every inch is equal to 100 miles. Then I could start asking questions about how do we determine how far the Horn of Africa is from the coast of South America and things like that. So we can start doing some measurements, start integrating some of those math skills into our social studies lessons. And instead of having to go borrow a ruler and make or a box of rulers from a math teacher so I can then kind of hand them out to the kids and stuff, we can kind of do this in the digital space, maybe save a little time there. See, Jason was able to draw a line. You might not be able to see, but it's actually giving us the distance and how big that line is in inches. So we can then really start doing some equations. So I like using the math manipulatives. You can see there's a dice roller there for probability and things like that. But yeah, the ruler, when we're doing map work, geography type work, is very helpful.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and who can't use a timer, right? I mean, a timer or a stopwatch, and basically any type of activity, right, can turn it into a timed activity. This
Yeah, I
is,
probably spent too much time
I'm
answering
in
that question,
full,
so that would have helped.
full agreement with Peter that this is one of the best little content packs within links,
Mm.
and really has a lot to offer. The other one that I think is worth a look for almost anybody is the backgrounds. So we have math backgrounds. Oh, it was the same place, Jason. You're
Okay.
gonna make me show everybody where to go again. No, that's actually probably better. The little plus button down at the bottom toolbar, right? That is where we activate this section.
Yeah.
It's in that centermost group there. We tap plus and then content. So there are a bunch of backgrounds that are included with links, and I like these tools because you can use these backgrounds for almost any type of lesson delivery. Yes, we have more STEM focused ones with graph paper. Yes, we have more writing ones that are focused with lined paper. But the categories, the graphic organizers, the flowcharts, etc., really can be useful in any number of contexts. And these are going to save you so much time. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a presentation or a lesson type context where I just need to categorize something really quick and make like two columns. And so the backgrounds will allow me to do that with a minimum of effort. So um, when we are talking to teachers throughout our day, I think Peter and I probably have very similar experiences because we both cued in on both of these features. The backgrounds and the math tools are kind of the best of this category. So mix and match, use them how you prefer. Jason can show you here. The way that you put them on screen is you just tap them and drag them out. So you tap and hold and drag them. Then you can resize them. You can change them as needed. The tables are expandable. The graph paper, you can choose how fine or wide, whether it's dot grid or lines. There's a lot of options here and things to offer. So, if we're doing a sorting activity on continents, for instance, maybe we can have those same categories from the last page brought over here, talk about which ones are in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and which ones are in the global east, the global west, etc., and in our conception of those terms. So we can definitely use backgrounds, grids, etc., for a whole range of things. And these are always just waiting for you. You don't have to recreate these every time. If you make a really good one that you like, you can just save it as a links file and come back to it as well. So I would definitely rely on the backgrounds and the math tools, not only for math, like Peter said. There's a lot of different ways that we can assess or utilize these tools in other lessons.
I think
Yeah,
that was
a
super.
lot of good stuff in here.
Yeah, I think both of those are super helpful. The math tools, and then even the backgrounds. Thinking that there's so many times I've seen so many times where like you get in a conversation and you want to like quickly, you're like always need it always seemed like to me, even though I was majority in elementary school, I was always using Venn diagrams like nobody's business. We'd get
Mhm.
talking and you get like in the classroom, we'd start comparing different things. And it's like, okay, we need to kind of categorize what our answers are, what we're talking through here. So let's actually break out a Venn diagram and actually go through this and set them up that way. So I think both of the tools that you guys and the features that you guys talked about, I think are super helpful because they really are things that you can reach in kind of like in your bag of tricks or your goodie bag to pull out at a moment's notice. I created a page really quickly and put some of these things on as Evan was talking through them just to put them on here. As Peter was talking about the math tools, I was doing my best to get it to work, and unfortunately that background image is a little bit funky, didn't want to totally cooperate, but that's probably more of an extension of the image that I chose. So I think while we're kind of talking through some of these pieces, I think probably our next question, because we did get a kind of question that was given to us, and it's what's a quick fix or a fallback trick that you both utilize when something doesn't go on as planned? Because obviously, we all, all former educators or all educators go through this. You're in the middle of going through something, and then something happens. Evan, Peter, and I got to witness this even just a little bit ago. My computer just decided, you know what? I want to restart right here and now as we were right on the call. So something doesn't go right or doesn't go as planned, and you have to kind of pivot. And that's always the mark of a great teacher. So what's your, Evan and Peter, what's your fallback trick or tip that you have for a quick fix if something doesn't go as planned?
I'm going to stay in links again. So I was a big sort of like I wanted to write the notes out. I wanted to model good note taking practices, diagrams, arrows, sort of mind mapping as we were talking about things, making connections. And
Mhm.
it never failed. And this was, before we had panels in our room. It never failed that I would get to the end of that whiteboard and I wouldn't have any more space and we'd still have, 15, 20 minutes left in class. And here I am like, hey, can we take a picture of this? Because I've got to erase something and keep writing here. Well, you've got an interactive flat panel. We've got these things now. Let's put them to use. I love the infinite canvas feature in links because if I'm just filling up a slide here, you can see Jason is, filled this slide up with a graphic organizer. And well, what if there's more things we want to do outside of this graphic organizer, but we don't want to leave this page because the information we've populated on this organizer is really important for the rest of the notes we're going to be taking. Well, in the way we have links set up right now, you've got a contained slide. It's got contained finite dimensions to it. Eventually, we get to the end of the page, whether it's left, right, top, or bottom. But with infinite canvas in links, it kind of expands that and it gives you, I'm not going to say, maybe infinite's not the best word, but it makes your canvas much bigger, giving you a lot more space to get what you need to get done. So to do that, we actually hit that page menu on the bottom of the toolbar again. It's the same place that we access the curtain tool from. So we hit that page space and there should be an option that says infinite canvas. Right now we have it unchecked. So we're going to check that option. It's third down from the top. And
Mhm.
now if we zoom out a little bit and yeah, we zoom out, we can see that we've got a lot more space left, right, top, bottom. And we can actually see the full view of this. Jason, if you go back to that pages menu, and we're going to select something that says radar view.
Radar view. Got it.
That's third from the bottom. Yep. And you see at the bottom there, now we've got a window where we can see the expansion of our canvas. We can see sort of everything going on. And within that little window you've got on the lower left there, Jason, you can actually scroll around the canvas now and see, we can see different parts of it. So as he scrolls along the canvas here, in the thumbnail, he's moving the larger canvas to where he needs to be. And you can see there's just significantly more room now that we've turned on infinite canvas. So if you're a mind mapper, if you're a whole class note taker kind of teacher, infinite canvas can really give you lots of space to get all of your ideas. And you might be able to fit an entire you might be able to fit an entire class period of notes on a single slide and then just share that single slide out instead of having to stretch things across 4 or 5 separate pages. So I really like infinite canvas for those reasons.
I think that's a fantastic one. I was always utilizing as much space, and unfortunately, it feels like you have to go through a couple of years teaching before you finally learn the art of like even when you're writing on a whiteboard of controlling your like having some spatial awareness of your sizes, but having like a infinite canvas setup like this allows you to not worry about that as much because like you said you're focusing on the content that you're teaching and in the instructions piece. So I think that's a fantastic piece. Evan,
Absolutely.
what do you have?
Yeah, I just really like this one. This is so nice. I just wanted to point out really quick. This is also a feature in our Note application too. So if you're not a Big Links whiteboard user, this is something that the Note app, that more basic whiteboard, can do for you too. But I hear from so many teachers, and this isn't really like our recommended setup, but schools have a limited amount of space in the classroom, right? And a little bit of limited amount of wall space. I hear from teachers who come in after the summer break or whenever these are installed, and they have a panel in front of their whiteboard. It might even be drilled through their whiteboard to get to the wall in order to mount it. And so you may be losing some traditional physical whiteboard space once you get an interactive panel. Just keep in mind, you are not limited to, if it's 75 inches or however big this panel is, you're not limited to that actual dimension because you have virtual space all around the edges of your panel in either of these apps. So that hopefully will alleviate a little bit of the concern, especially if these are taking away some of your existing whiteboard space. You still have options there. The one I was thinking of for how do we adapt when something goes wrong, I was trying to think, well, what does go wrong? What do I hear about the most? And probably in my conversations with teachers, and what I hear about the most are schools that have some trouble with our screen sharing application. I talked about those earlier as a good option for broadcasting student work up to the panel. But even if you're just using it to broadcast your teacher's device, the laptop screen sharing up to the front of the room, sometimes wireless internet being what it is, right? We've all been in times when the Wi-Fi gets a little bit screwy and it just doesn't work very well, especially maybe when students are on their devices and all the teachers are screen sharing in every room simultaneously. Things get a bit congested on that network. And so the screen sharing can get fuzzy, the screen sharing can drop out. If you're trying to play a video, it might start stuttering and the audio doesn't match up quite right. These are things that we hear about frequently. And there's a couple ways that we can resolve that. But my favorite one is the simplest and the most reliable. And that is to remember that there are cables that came with your panel too. Now, not everybody's room is actually set up to make this a feasible solution, but many of ours are, especially if it's a temporary solution, right? And we're just waiting for the Wi-Fi to come back and be as powerful as it normally is. A lot of our panel stands and carts have shelves on them, or a shelf that can be affixed to them to just dock your laptop up at the front of the room. And the panel comes with all the cables that you need. And so you don't need to go out and buy anything. This isn't something that you're going to need to sink your own money into because you are getting those with the panel purchase. So I would recommend a little USB-C cable. This guy is my favorite because it connects everything all at once. It even charges your laptop. So another unforeseen problem could be that your laptop has 5% battery and you still have 3 hours of school left in the day and you aren't always tethered to your desk. So this could be another option for you to work with in terms of screen sharing. So I really like just keeping a USB-C cable with me. If you're roaming from room to room, put that in your backpack or your briefcase or what have you, along with your laptop. I carry one to all of my trainings just in case, and often it pays off to have one with you. So again, it comes with the panel, and hopefully you have a shelf or something similar, either with the panel cart or a desk that can be used near the front of the room that can help save you in those scenarios when the Wi-Fi is just not quite right or your laptop battery is about to die. I hear that one from teachers a lot. Most don't realize that a single cable will solve their problem if they can just get to the front of the room, even temporarily, to make that work until the end of the lesson.
I absolutely love that because as you were sitting there talking about that, I'm sitting here and I look over to my left and on my floor, I have a nice little pile of cables that I've been using because I've been doing a bunch of different testing and things. And I just kind of smiled when you said that because I never realized that a USB-C cable would be so valuable to me and so user friendly and like it does. At times it really seems to kind of solve your woes, if you will. And it's like it's just one cable, but it does. If you have the ability, it's acting a little wonky, you're doing, let's say you're doing clever share and like you said, it's getting a little fuzzy all of a sudden, or you're using, unplugged, you can switch that cable and just keep right on moving because we all know as former teachers, you can't lose the momentum. The second you lose that momentum with your instruction, the kids start
Yep,
getting into things. They start losing their you lose them and you're starting all over. So that's a great one.
exactly. Just keep
Well,
that flow going. There's no quicker way to recover than just plugging in a single cable, right? So
yeah, the way,
yeah,
yeah,
it's all about how you pivot. Things will go wrong, and if you can just have a little plan in case of emergency, you've got it ready.
well, it's funny. I think all of our participants would agree with us that you can easily say that I I don't think I've ever met one educator, one person that works with education that can say they've always had a flawless experience. Nothing, no problems ever. I've never run across that because it happens daily. So that's fantastic. That's fantastic advice. Let's see. I'm looking here to see if we have questions. Okay, here's one that came in. What is the single most underrated feature on a panel that you think most of the teachers, like 90% of teachers, don't even know exists?
I know.
Good question. Yeah, go for it, Peter. What's your underrated
Hey,
feature?
Jason, let's go back to the Note app.
Okay, going into note. Let me get
All
you a
right.
fresh
So,
gauge.
oh no, this is perfect. We can stay right here.
Okay, we'll stay right here then.
So, Mr. Newman, he's taken all class period to write out these notes for his classroom. Yes, some of his students were following along, making their own copies, making their own changes to these things. But you always have those students. They might have missed a few minutes for the bathroom break. They might have, you know, had a not a lot of sleep the night before. Maybe they zoned out a little bit. But the main thing we need to do here is we've got these notes and we need to get them in the students' hands in a way where they're not losing information. So I love the share feature in Note. So once you have finished your note slide or your note presentation for the day, there is a share feature in the lower left toolbar. It's that icon right there in the middle. And you say, once you click that, it says preparing to export. And once we finish, you get a QR code. That QR code is basically a PDF that is easily shareable to any of your students. They walk by, scan it with their cell phone, scan it with their tablet, whatever that is. I'm sure if you expanded the screen, you could actually scan it right now, and you could go ahead and test this feature. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up on my phone. It's gonna ask you to
Yep.
open that QR code in um, in Chrome or whatever your browser is, and you're gonna see the lesson that Mr. Newman has just created right there on your phone. And your kids are good enough with their phone that they're going to be able to then go here and say, oh, I've got a nice PDF here. Let me save that. I'll add it to my cloud drive, or I'll add it somewhat in my storage in my phone. Maybe I'll email it to myself, and now I've got it in my email. But they've got a copy of the note right here for them. No information lost. As a teacher, you didn't have to do anything but hit share. There's 2 minutes left in class. Hey guys, make sure you get these on the way out. Click share, and you're good to go. I'm not sure how many teachers know about that feature, but I find it highly useful for those students that just might miss a thing or two or all of it.
I, you know what? I absolutely love that. And it is a feature that I don't think about enough, even myself, but it's so helpful because here it is. You've worked so hard, as a teacher, you've worked so hard on all this work that they've put in. The students have helped you, you've contributed. And a lot of times, like we used to be back in, thinking back to when we only had whiteboards in our rooms or chalkboards or whatever. You go to erase this at the end of the day, it's not there. You have to recreate it if you want it there. But to share it with somebody, having that feature, that share feature, like you said, Peter, that's fantastic. Just having that there, being able to click on it, expand it. Now you're giving it to your students. That instruction, that quality education is not lost. So great thought. That it's something
For
And
I
we
sure.
use it, we use it a lot in our trainings. And
We
we
do.
finish something and we say, hey guys, you probably missed a bunch of that. Here, teachers on your way out, go ahead and scan this and you'll be able to review it later. All the, good things we taught you. So
nice.
very
Definitely.
Fantastic.
And I know some schools, maybe even the majority of schools now, are leaning away from smartphones, right? The students may not have something to scan a QR code with. There's another button in that menu there on the left that'll send it right to the teacher's Google Drive. So you can just walk back to your laptop and post it in Google Classroom or what have you. So you don't necessarily need to rely on the QR code, but if you do have students with devices in the class, there's no quicker way to share it. It's the ideal in that
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. And then you're sharing, like you mentioned, your import and
Yeah,
export are there too. And all right. What
absolutely.
do you have any on your side, Evan, that you're thinking of that's probably one of those features that you didn't even consider,
Yep.
or think most people don't consider?
Definitely. So we talked
Okay.
about Note and we talked about links, right? Many people don't know there's actually a third whiteboard style application on the panel. This one isn't really focused on writing or diagramming. It's more focused on art. And so obviously we have art classes, right, that can make use of this. But I find that for a lot of just general education classrooms, the possibilities for a brain break or just some creative expression throughout the day, this one's really underrated because people don't really look, we already have two whiteboarding app, do we really need a third? Well, this one's a little bit different in that it has just a lot more brushes and fun features specifically for art. So it's called Palette, like an artist's palette. And it is probably on most of your panels within the all apps. So you probably have to swipe up or tap the apps waffle or however you get there, depending on your panel. It's going to be listed under P. These are alphabetical, of course, and there's our little yellow palette app. I use this with classes and even at home with my kids because they really respond to just the ability to draw. And yes, you can draw in links and you can draw in Note, and that's all well and good. But the brushes here are a little bit different. So Jason's going there. It's coming in on Zoom. He's allowing some line width and expression there with the different patterns available in that brush. Now he's changed to a different color and he's adding some leaves. Not coming through on Zoom just yet. Oh, there it is. Wonder why that one's got a little bit of a time delay there. But I really like the chalk. There's like a almost like a pastel type chalk tool. There's a spray, like a spray can. So it is really a fun application to use. And you can see the colors there. You've got a lot more variety, but you can also mix your colors. So Jason, if you pick one of your colors, maybe that hot pink, a nice bright color there. Maybe we need to make that a little bit more subtle. So you can use that palette there to kind of scrub it. So you can change, if you go the other direction, I believe, you'll mix in some of that hot pink to your black and you can stop or go all the way to 100% that color. And now you can mix in some of that, was it like turquoise? It looks like.
Hmm.
And so you can make some really interesting colors and kids have a lot of fun doing that. So I think in terms of the underrated apps, it's one you almost never hear about. A lot of people don't even realize it's there. And like I said, if you happen to be an art teacher, absolutely great tool to have at your disposal if you have a touch panel in your classroom. But then also for your everyday classrooms, what kid doesn't like to just take a minute to relax for and just draw a quick little doodle here? So this is another way to get that engagement, that interaction up at the front of the class. And if you're looking for a little bit more variety, a little bit more creative tools rather than the markers and pens that Note, for example, had, this is a really good tool just to keep in mind. And you may not have ever realized that it existed.
Evan, I
You
love
know,
that one. When I was teaching high school, my kids always wanted like that last 5 minutes to just like draw on the white erase board.
Yeah.
Like they just loved it. And it was just like I could get them to
Hmm.
focus if I was like, all right, last 5 minutes, you guys can do some art on the board. Like it was just like I don't know why they found it so fun, but like the things that they would like create in like the 5 minutes after class. You get an artist up there and they start doing some things you didn't quite think were possible with like a dry erase marker, or in this case, a digital pen. So love that. Let their creativity flow.
I think
Fantastic.
that's yeah, I think that's a great thought. It is I hear about it, and it's funny. Even as I used to work in district offices, I moved from the classroom into district offices, and I go room to room. And Peter, you're exactly right. Like the last couple minutes of each day, like you could go almost throughout the hallway and see all these great creations from the students. If they're, as long as everything else was taken care of, the teachers really don't mind. And I never used to mind with my own classroom. So that's a fantastic one.
Well, as a history teacher, I would always pull up classic works of art on the projector and get them to recreate them on the board, which was also, really fun. It was like kind of wild to watch like a kid, mix and match dry erase colors to hone in
Yeah.
on the right hue.
That takes talent. That is not so simple. It's not a great medium, but
Oh,
where there's a will, there's a way.
yeah. Well, at least with like this one, it offers a little bit more of the blending capabilities with the little palette, mixer there. Well, it looks like we have about 9 minutes left of our session today. So I think I want to give a couple minutes for a couple extra minutes in case anybody else has any more questions. But as we're kind of rounding things out, I think it's important that we think about. We've presented a lot of different things for you guys, all of you that have attended today. If there was one thing, Evan and Peter, if there was one thing that you could give to the teachers and give to our participants that have come today, that they could try in their classrooms tomorrow morning, or for even our district people that attended, that they could share with their teachers, that they could try tomorrow, what's one thing that you could give them that they could try?
I would say, and I'm gonna jump over to Unplugged, which Evan has talked about at length today. But within Unplugged, you always think about it from a screen sharing point of view, as in I need to share my laptop screen with the panel. It's always thought about in that direction, like teacher laptop screen or student laptop screen projected on the panel. But there's another route you can take with Unplugged, and that is mirroring your IFP screen back to your computer and then controlling your panel with mouse clicks. So that's often kind of a missed feature in Unplugged. And our team, we get a lot of use out of it because, as you can see the perfect case for it right now. What is better in a distance learning situation, in a virtual learning situation? The small screen that we see Jason on with the panel in the background, where we can sort of see what's going on with the panel, or the way he's shared his panel screen to Zoom. So if you are a distance learning teacher, if you're ever doing any remote learning, anything like that where students are joining in virtually, don't think that you have lost a teaching tool in the panel, because you can still open Unplugged, mirror your IFP back to your computer, and you'll essentially have a window that is your IFP on your computer. And with that window, you can just share that particular screen. And now you're sharing your panel screen out to whoever has joined that virtual meeting. So I really like that from a training perspective, because if we are not in the room with teachers, it's kind of hard to show them things on a panel via webcam. So I use this feature a ton when I'm trying to do that. So if you're ever in distance learning situations, remote learning, extended learning beyond the classroom, whatever it is your district calls it, don't think
Mhm.
that you've lost a teaching tool in the panel, because you can still make that a part of your lesson.
I think that's such an underutilized thought process, but you're exactly right. Like thinking a little bit outside of the box, going in reverse compared to the normal. I think that's great, great, great thought. Awesome. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
that one, Pete.
that is a really good use case for that, because a lot of people who use Unplugged see that other box and they just skip right past it, right? It gives you the two options. Do you want to put your laptop screen up on the panel? Do you want to put your panel screen on your laptop? And 99% of the time, they're going with the first option. There is some really useful stuff you can do when you bring the panel screen onto your computer.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good thought there, Peter. Okay.
All right, Evan, what's
Thanks.
your one thing?
Yeah. One thing, I guess I can make this relate in that thinking about taking away teacher tools and ways to use things in new ways. I've been speaking to a lot of teachers this fall as we're going back to school in the US about the possibilities and limitations that teachers assume are the case now when they're using one of these in their classroom that maybe it's freshly installed. And a big one that has come up for me this year is document cameras. So if you happen to have a document camera, or maybe you're interested in getting a document camera and wondering how it will work with these, that is a major tool that I would take away from this. That a lot of teachers don't know that you have the document camera application. So depending on your panel, it's probably called Visualizer. That one's down. Jason has found it for you already. It's in the V section, right? It starts with the letter V. So it's at the end almost of our alphabetical list of applications. But you open up Visualizer, and if you have a camera that plugs into your panel, chances are it's going to work with Visualizer. So here we've got a document camera. Jason's already shown us some things that we couldn't see on the screen before. We've got our little time sign and little icon there. That looks great. But we don't have to use technology for everything in our classroom, right? Sometimes paper tools are best. When you're teaching kids how to write by hand, how to print, sometimes showing them an actual hand and a pencil is invaluable, right? Even beyond writing on a touch screen, that it just changes how your hand position goes and how those letters are formed. So showing them with a document camera, essential. Obviously, reading things that do not have a digital version. You get some books from your media center or your library to share with your class. You're going to be using the document camera. And working out math problems on a worksheet. Yes, you can do that on the panel. Maybe you prefer to do it on the paper. Pretty straightforward. So this is an app that I really wish more people knew about because Visualizer just doesn't really scream like document camera. That's what it does. Really handy tool. And if you need a document camera, you need a document camera. And don't think that you've lost it by taking away a projector or some other system that was in place to share your document camera. You still have it with the Visualizer app here. As Jason is showing you, he can still write and see pretty clearly what's going on there. You can also write on the panel itself too. There's the mark tool there where you can annotate on screen. You can write on the paper and then write on the screen that's showing the paper if you want to maybe make some temporary notes on things that then you can scrub away without affecting your image. So there are a lot of ways that you can go about that. There you go. We've solved for X.
Yes, we have.
Okay. Yeah.
I think
So,
that's
so
enough.
that's my takeaway. Don't think you've lost something, right? We've talked about, you can still use the panel for virtual learning or extended learning beyond the classroom. You can still use the panel with document cameras. You can still use the panel if, your laptop's about to die and so forth. We've come back to that a couple times that there's a lot of ways to use the interface on this thing to use familiar tools as well. It's not all about the new things. You can bring in the old tools you've been using and have a way to maybe expand on them in new ways.
That's a kind of great way to kind of finish us off with our session today, because we've talked a lot about like our tools. Obviously, our IFPs are invaluable. They have lots of tools, they have lots of features we can use. But like you even mentioned, Evan, there's some great applications, there's some great features that we still have useful. I mean, I can't tell you. I was in a classroom yesterday, and there was still plenty of physical media, physical documents and worksheets. So they happen to have in her classroom, she did have a document camera. Being able to connect that document camera to the IFP allows her to still have those options, to still have access to that media and utilize those. So, we've presented a lot of things today. I think both the things that we kind of leave as the kind of final items to kind of leave you with, like the IFP mirroring for use on the devices, the document camera visualizer app on those devices. Those are just great ways to kind of put a bow on today's session. I was looking to see if we had any other questions in the chat or anything. I didn't see anything else come through, so I think we're in a good spot to kind of leave you guys with these awesome pieces that we talked about today. So I think with that, we'll stay around for another minute or two. If anybody needs to talk to us or wants to put anything in the chat, but we'd like to wish you guys all a great rest of your day. Thank you to Evan and Peter for I got to be kind of like the host and allow them to kind of drive and tell me all their good stuff that they had in their toolboxes. But I definitely appreciate it, and hopefully you'll attend our next session, our next webinar when we have it.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone, and thanks to Jason for showing us all of the panel goodies there as we talk you through it. The visual aids are, I'm sure, much appreciated. So that was fantastic, and thanks to all of our attendees for giving us some time here today. I know time is always short as a teacher, so we appreciate it, and hopefully you learned a few useful things that you can take back to your classrooms to make that hour worth it. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, and be on the
Thanks for
lookout.
joining us.
Posted to our YouTube site when we get a chance. So, sorry, Peter, didn't mean to interrupt you as you were saying something.
Just saying thank you for everyone for joining us. Reach out if you have any questions. Looks like Ricardo has a question.
Okay.
And went away.
Oh.
He might have been waving at us. I'm not sure.
All right.
But yeah, if there's anything in the chat, if you need to ask us any more questions, we'll hang out for a minute here. No worries.
Very welcome. Glad we could provide something useful for you guys. Thank you so much. Stop the recording.